Namaste, greetings to everyone. Today I'll be continuing with the teaching on parting from the four attachments. And in the last session, we already covered the first topic, which is by abandoning attachment to this life, one's mind turns towards the Dharma. And so that had several subtopics such as meditation on the verity of human birth, meditation on impermanence, and meditation on the law of cause and effect. And we covered all of that already. We now come to the second topic, which is by abandoning attachment to cyclic existence. The Dharma arises as the path. So, in order to speak of this topic, we need to mainly contemplate upon the faults of samsara. In order to do this, we first need to take refuge in the three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, and then generate a thought of awakening. So following that, we need to then contemplate upon the sufferings of the different beings of samsara. And we first need to bring to mind the sufferings of the hell beings. In the hot hells, the beings experience great pain due to intense heat, and also their bodies being pierced by spears, swords, knives, wheels, arrows, and so on. And so those are the main sufferings of the hot house. In the cold house, the beings suffer due to intense cold, and also because their body freezes and shatters. So there's great suffering there. Even in the neighboring hells, the beings have to experience great suffering, such as their bodies being pierced by weapons. So there is many such sufferings in the hell realms. In the hungry ghost realm, the beings experience great suffering caused due to intense hunger and thirst, and also great fear. So that is the main suffering of the hungry ghost realm. And in the animal realms, the beings have to experience great suffering of eating each other in order to survive. And also the suffering of getting killed by humans for food. So therefore, those are the main sufferings of the animal realm. Even in the heavenly realms, even in the human realms, there is great suffering, such as humans. First of all, there's an imbalance in society. Some are very rich, some are very poor. And then also there is the situation in which humans do not get what they want and instead get what they don't want, such as COVID-19. Nobody wants COVID-19, but we have it spreading in the world. And we want it to go away, but it's not going away easily. So that is one of the many examples of how we get what we don't want and we don't get what we want. So, and then also we have the suffering of the parting from our loved ones as humans, because it is impermanent, it is subject to change, everything is subject to change, and so is our time with our loved ones. So that too is one of the sufferings. And then in the heavenly realms also there are many sufferings, especially in the desire realm. The heavenly gods have to experience the suffering of death, and that is very severe, because the gods of the desire realm, at the moment of their death, they see with their cleverance of how they are going to be reborn as a hell being, or in the lower realms, any of the places in the lower realms in their future existence. That is because as a god, they have exhausted their good karma, the result of their good karma, by enjoying the pleasures in the heavenly realm for a long time. So once they die, what's left is for them to experience and use up the results of their past bad karma. So therefore, with their cleverness, they can see their future miserable state, and due to seeing that, it causes them great mental suffering and mental unhappiness. So it is said that the mental suffering is much greater compared to the physical suffering of the hell beings. And so although the gods are much better off than the humans, they live much longer and they enjoy much more pleasures because they are also subject to change and are the nature of impermanence. They must die eventually and fall to the lower realms and continue on with their journey in samsara. And for the gods of the form and the formless realm, they must, although they currently do not need to go through any severe suffering, once they die, they must be reborn, just like the gods of the desire realm in a lower realm or in other miserable states. And so, as you can see, there is suffering everywhere in samsara. There's no place in samsara where there's no suffering. So having understood this, you should develop distaste or detachment towards samsara, seeing the life of samsara as being essenceless and not worth being attached to. And having understood that, you should look forward to attaining enlightenment or liberation from samsara. And with this, we have completed the contemplation upon the second topic. We now come to the third topic, which is by abandoning attachment to one's own welfare, the confusion on the path is dispelled. So this also has several subtopics, such as the meditation on loving kindness, meditation on compassion, and meditation on the thought of awakening. So there's 3 subtopics. To speak of the first, we need to understand that just if I myself alone seek liberation from samsara, that is not right. Because all sentient beings of the 3 realms have once been my own mother as well as father in one's past lifetimes, and so therefore they are very kind to me. They have been very kind to me. And the way is that in the beginning, my mother has kept me in her womb before I was born and kept me for many months, keeping me safe. And then after having been born, my mother has fed me so that I may not starve and suffer, and also to keep me alive, and also has put clothes on me so that I will not have to freeze and so on. And also my mother has taught me languages, has taught me how to speak, so that I may be able to communicate in the society and be able to live in society. And so therefore, if you think about all the kindness which your mother has shown upon you, it's very great. And so therefore you should pray that may she be happy and may she always be endowed with the causes of happiness. And this is the contemplation on the thought of loving kindness. After having gotten accustomed to that thought and having directed your thoughts towards your own mother, you should then extend your practice towards your friends, your relatives, even those who harm you, and the beings of the lower realms, and also all sentient beings. And pray that they be happy and be endowed with the causes of happiness. This practice is important because it is the source or the cause for compassion to arise. So these 3 contemplations also have its own connection. It is from compassion that the thought of awakening arises, and it is from loving kindness which compassion arises. So if you want thought of awakening, which is bodhichitta, and also the compassion to arise, it's first important to train in this thought, the thought of loving kindness first. So with this, we have completed this first subtopic. We now come to the second subtopic, which is the contemplation on the compassion, contemplation on compassion, or meditation on compassion. So in order to speak of this, one needs to once again bring to mind all the good that one's mother has done for you, and understand that although my mother must be freed from suffering, she currently is not freed from suffering. She is subject to suffering. And so therefore, you should pity her, you should feel compassion for her. And you should train in that thought, in wishing, may she be free from suffering and the causes of suffering, which are the negative deeds. And once you get, you should train in that thought, and you should also just wish very strongly, you should have a strong wish that how wonderful it would be if my mother could be freed from her suffering. So I shall take upon myself the responsibility to free her from her suffering. And so you should train in such a thought. And first direct this thought towards your mother. And then once you get accustomed to that, you should slowly extend that thought towards your relatives, your friends, your enemies, your neighbors, and the beings of the lower realms and all sentient beings, and pray that they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. So this is important because, as I mentioned earlier, without loving kindness and compassion, the thought of awakening is impossible to generate. So therefore, you should first generate in these two thoughts. With this, we have completed the second subtopic. We now come to the third subtopic, which is meditation on the thought of awakening. For this, there are also several subtopics. The meditation on the aspiring thought of enlightenment, meditation on the equality of oneself and others, and meditation on the exchange of oneself and others. To speak of the first, one should first pray, or you should say, you could say, one should first bring to mind that although the beings of the three realms who have been one's mother should be happy, should be endowed with happiness and be freed from their suffering, currently I do not have the capability, or I do not have the ability, I'm not capable of freeing them from their suffering, as I myself am an ordinary sentient being at the moment. Not only that, but also the great powerful gods such as Brahma and Indra are incapable of helping them in such a way. Not just that, but even the Arahats and the Pratyeka Buddhas, the great disciples of the Buddha, are also incapable of helping them to free them from their suffering and grant them true bliss and happiness. So when you think about it, it is only the fully enlightened Buddha who is capable or has the true ability to help all sentient beings in such a way. Having understood that, one should generate the thought of attaining awakening, to attain the unsurpassable enlightenment, so that one may be in the correct position, in the powerful position to help others, to free them from cyclic existence. So this is the thought, the aspiring thought of enlightenment. This is very important because this is the main cause for attaining enlightenment. And if you have this thought, whatever practice that you do becomes a cause for attaining enlightenment as well, whatever good practice that you do. So this is very important. We now come to the second subtopic, which is meditation on the equality of oneself and others. So during this meditation, one needs to contemplate that just as I myself wish to be happy, similarly, other sentient beings also wish to be happy. And just as I do not wish to suffer, others do not also wish to suffer. So if you think about it, we have a lot of similarities. We have a lot in common with oneself and others. So therefore, just as I wish to accomplish my own happiness, I should also make sure to accomplish the happiness of others. Just as I make efforts to not have to undergo suffering, I should also make efforts so that others may not have to undergo suffering as well. So this is the main contemplation on the equality of oneself and others. We now come to the third subtopic, which is the meditation on the exchange of oneself and others. In order to think about this, one needs to first visualize one's mother in front of oneself, and bring to mind all the kindness which she has shown upon you, and understand that right now, currently, she is subject to suffering, and pity her, and you should feel compassion for her. And then you should proceed with your contemplation or meditation and think that may all of the suffering and the causes of the suffering which my mother has be transferred to me, and may I experience the suffering, all of her suffering on her behalf, so she may not have to go through the suffering. And may all of my happiness, my peace, and my good karma be transferred to her, so that she may experience happiness instead of suffering, and may that transference of my good karma and happiness also serve as a cause for her eventual enlightenment. So you should meditate in that way. And once you get good at meditating or directing your thoughts in such a way towards your own mother of your present life, you should then extend that thought to your relatives, your friends, your enemies, and the beings of the lower realms, and all sentient beings. And you should then also visualize that all of their suffering gathers into one form, and that dissolves into oneself. And with that, one also transfers one's own good karma and peace to them, so that temporarily all of their all of their wishes will be fulfilled, and all of their temporarily all of their wishes will be fulfilled, and ultimately they will attain enlightenment. So you should meditate and pray in such a way. So just to mention that again, we need to visualize that all of their suffering combines into one form, and that dissolves into oneself, and for you to, so that you may take on their suffering, and they may not have to undergo that suffering. And then in return, you offer your happiness and peace, so that temporarily all of their wishes be fulfilled, and ultimately they will attain enlightenment. So that is the contemplation. And this is the main practice, one of the main practices which all of the Buddhas had practiced before they had attained enlightenment. So this is very important. Once again, it mentions and reminds you that whatever practice that you are practicing, especially during all of the earlier mentioned topics, it's important to practice taking refuge in the three jewels in the beginning, as well as generating the thought of awakening, and then proceeding on with your practice. And also during the actual practice, if you can practice a Guru Yoga, that is also very excellent, very good. So that is recommended. And at the end of practices, any of the practices, it's important to dedicate the merit, so that all sentient beings may attain enlightenment. So how you dedicate it is that after having accomplished any good deed, you should pray that may this good deed that I have just accumulated or performed serve as a cause for all sentient beings to attain enlightenment. So if you pray in such a way, you are dedicating your merit for the eventual enlightenment of all sentient beings. And that is what we call the dedication. And what's more, it's important not just during the meditation, but also during the post-meditation, such as when you are walking, sleeping, eating, sitting, and so on, to bring to mind all of the earlier mentioned contemplations. So if you do that, then you'll get very accustomed to the contemplations, and eventually it'll be a natural thought, rather than having to force yourself to think or contemplate in such ways. It will just be very natural, which is what we need to have. So that is recommended, even in the post-meditation, to bring to mind all of the earlier mentioned contemplations. With this, we have completed the third subtopic. We now come to the fourth topic, which is by abandoning attachment to the four extremes. Confusion or deluded appearances arise as wisdom. So this is the fourth topic. By abandoning attachment to the four extremes, deluded appearances arise or manifest as wisdom. So it mentions that according to other practice manuals, it would recommend at this point something like practice on the shamatha and vipassana, and especially during the practice of vipassana, it would recommend the practice on the meditation on emptiness of the self and the meditation on the emptiness of others or dharmas. So that is what is recommended in other textbooks. But currently, when we are speaking of departing from the four attachments, a different approach is recommended or suggested. It is a threefold practice, which we need to do during the meditation state. And this is, in the beginning, you should first understand that all appearances are the nature of one's own mind. Then you should understand that the mind itself is illusory. And then finally, you should understand that illusion is devoid of true nature. So this is the process. When you are in meditation, you should try to understand that all appearances which you perceive are the nature of one's own mind, and nothing other than that. Then you should understand that mind itself is illusory, like a dream, like a mirage. And then you should understand that illusion itself is devoid of any existence. There's no truth to it. It is devoid of any true existence or nature. So this is the process which you need to contemplate upon during the meditation. During the post-meditation, it's important to try to see all appearances as being like a mirage, you should train in seeing all appearances as being similar to a mirage, a dream, an illusion, and not grasp onto them as being truly real. You should try to develop detachment towards appearances. And so this is what you must do during the post-meditation. So this is very important. If you wish to practice a meditation on emptiness in greater detail, it is recommended that you seek the teacher directly. Ask the questions, whatever you have, to the teacher, and clarify your doubts, and you will then have right or correct understanding on how to meditate on emptiness properly. Otherwise, by just meditating on emptiness with the understanding of a few words and with just limited understanding, it is dangerous that you may end up practicing or meditating on emptiness incorrectly. And so therefore, it's important to seek the teacher when you have the time to ask questions and receive more detailed explanations and guidance or instructions on the practice of meditation on emptiness. And it also mentions that whatever good karma that you perform, it's important to not be proud of it. Especially, you should not be proud or grasp onto the three spheres, which are the thoughts of I am the practitioner who has performed the good deed. That being, such as my mother, is the object of my practice, and compassion or emptiness or so on. This kind of practice is the practice. So you should not hold on to such thoughts or grasp onto such thoughts. Rather, you should understand that oneself, the practitioner, the object of your practice, which is the other sentient being, and also the practice itself, which you are practicing, are all devoid of true nature. And in that way, you should develop detachment towards it. You should not be attached and neither be proud of it, proud of your practices and your achievements. In some cases, you might need to tell others of your practices, of all of the good that you have done, or sort of your own achievements. In such cases, you should only do so if you are sure and certain that by telling the other person, it will certainly benefit them. If you are certain that by telling another person of your good deeds that you have accumulated or performed, or your achievements, it will benefit them and it will inspire them to practice the Dharma, then you should tell them. But still, you should not do it out in order to show off your own achievements. That is not right. It should be more, if you have to tell others, do it for their own, out of concern for them and for their wealth, and not just to show off your own achievements. So that is something we need to keep in mind. And try to always question whatever appearances you see and try to question, could it possibly be a mirage? Could it possibly be a dream? Is it really real? You need to question yourself in such ways. By questioning yourself in such ways, it weakens the thought of grasping towards appearances as being truly real. We have this strong attachment to seeing things, to believing things that we see as being ultimately real. But that is not right. It is not ultimately real. And if we continue to hold on to such thoughts of grasping to existence, then that is one of the sources for us it becomes a source for us to continue to be reborn in samsara, to continue to roam in samsara, to be trapped here in cyclic existence. So therefore, we need to deal with that thought, and the best way to deal is first to question it. It's difficult to deal with that thought, generally speaking, because we have been very accustomed to that thought from beginning of this lifetime, the strong attachment to believing things to truly exist. But it's not too late to deal with it. With the meditation on emptiness, we can get rid of such thoughts and eventually understand things as what they truly are to be. So therefore, you should question it. Question things to be, could they be a dream, a mirage, or an illusion? If you question in such ways, then it opens up a path, it opens up the possibility for you to see things to be more of a mirage, an illusion, and so on, rather than being truly existent. So therefore, that is also something to keep in mind. So with this, we have completed the teaching on parting from the 4 attachments. And just to remind you once again, this teaching was taught by Manjushri to Sachen, Kunga, Nyingpo. And it encompasses the whole Sutrayana path. And the teaching goes is, if you're attached to this life, you are not a true Dharma practitioner. If you are attached to cyclic existence, you do not have renunciation. If you have attachment to your own welfare, you do not have the thought of awakening. And if you have attachment to grasping, you do not have the view. So this is very profound, very short yet very profound. And so therefore it's important to practice this and take it as one's main practice. This practice or meditation, or you could say this teaching on parting from the 4 attachments, is one of the, you could say, the king of all of the mind trainings. There are many, many mind trainings, but this is sort of like the king. It is because it is so profound and yet so short. It includes all of the meaning or the principal practices of the Sutrayana path to attaining enlightenment in just these 4 lines. So therefore, it's important to practice this. It shows from the first line that if you have attachment, you are not a true Dharma practitioner. This shows that in order to become a true Dharma practitioner, whatever you do should not be done out of attachment to this life, but rather for the benefit of future lives, not towards this life. If you practice Dharma in order to gain fame, wealth, and recognition and so on in this life, then you are not a true Dharma practitioner. But if you do it, if you practice the Dharma for the welfare of, for the benefit of future lives, and do it so that, with good altruistic thoughts, and do it if you practice the Dharma so that it can benefit oneself and others in the future lives. And then it is true Dharma practice. But if you do it just for this life alone, then it's not correct. And then if you, as the second line says, if you attach to cyclic existence, you do not have renunciation. So this shows that in order to have renunciation, you cannot have attachment to cyclic existence, because those two are complete opposites. You either have renunciation or you have attachment to cyclic existence. It cannot go together. So because renunciation is a thought of being dissatisfied or being fed up with the sufferings of samsara, while attachment to samsara is seeing samsara to be pleasurable. So as you can see, those are complete opposites. So a true Dharma practitioner must have renunciation, which is a thought of liberation, to free themselves from suffering. And in order to develop this thought, it's important to first understand the faults of samsara. And having understood that, then finally renunciation is possible. So that is an important point. The third line teaches us that if you are attached to your own welfare, you do not have the thought of awakening. And these two similarly are also opposites. Thought of awakening and self-welfare thoughts of self-welfare are complete opposites, because thought of awakening is a thought in which you wish to attain enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings rather than oneself, while thoughts of self-welfare or self-interest are mainly, directed towards one's own benefit rather than the benefit of others. So as you can see, if you wish to attain enlightenment, you first need to have the thought of awakening. And in order to have the thought of awakening, you must abandon thoughts of self-interest. So this is an important point as well. Then we have the fourth line, which is if you have attachment to grasping, you do not have the view. And what this teaches is that in order to meditate on emptiness correctly, you must not grasp onto any concepts, not to any conceptual thoughts. And true meditation on emptiness must be a conceptless meditation, not a conceptual meditation. And there are four extremes, especially, or four conceptual extremes or thoughts which we must avoid when we practice emptiness on meditation. So the first extreme is the extreme of existence. The second extreme is the extreme of non-existence. The third is the extreme of both existence and non-existence, and the fourth is the extreme of neither existence nor non-existence. So these are the four extremes, and we need to avoid all of these extremes. We as sentient beings already have a very strong attachment to the extreme of existence because we think and see things to be truly existing. So that is not going to work when we meditate on emptiness. We must not have such conceptual thoughts to existence. But it doesn't mean that just because things don't exist mean that things are non-existent. Non-existence is also a conceptual thought, and it is an extreme. And that also should be avoided. It is neither existent. You cannot say, you cannot say that it is existence or non-existence. And because it isn't, you can't say that it is existence and non-existence on its own. You cannot also say that it is both existence and non-existence at the same time, because that would be impossible. And because there isn't existence and non-existence existing at the same time, or coexisting, there cannot be the opposite of that, which is neither existing nor non-existing at the same time as well. So therefore, we must not grasp onto any of those thoughts. So I just sort of mentioned this four extremes a bit right now, and how we should not have attachment to it. But these things, this topic should be, you should listen to this topic or teaching later on when you can meet the teacher personally and ask questions directly when you have the time. Because as I mentioned earlier, just teaching on a few words is not enough or sufficient. And with a limited understanding, it's difficult to meditate on emptiness. So therefore, when you have the time, please take the time to meet the teacher and ask the questions on how to meditate on this. The best way to fully understand how to meditate on emptiness would be meditation, or you could say by studying such textbooks such as Chandrakirti's Entry into the Middle Way. If you can study those kind of textbooks, then you will get a rough understanding of what the the view of the middle way is, and how one should proceed, and how one should meditate on emptiness in great detail. So therefore, when you have the time, please study that from a teacher, so that you may have the right understanding on emptiness. And so with this, we have completed the teaching. I pray that you all stay safe, and especially because the virus is still spreading, so you need to wear your masks, be clean, stay sanitized, and if you're not vaccinated yet, please do get vaccinated, because right now the main reason why the virus is still spreading is because there are many people, or unvaccinated people, who are reluctant to take the vaccine, and it is due to them which the virus is still spreading, and many people are dying. So therefore, please be considerate, if not for yourself, at least for others, and take the vaccine. So I would like to request you to do that. And once again, I would also like to request you to please take the teachings to heart. Listening to Dharma teachings is very good and excellent, but just listening alone is not sufficient. You need to apply the Dharma teachings, because the whole purpose why the Buddha taught the Dharma to others is so that the sentient beings can apply the Dharma to their mind and bring a change to their mind, so that it may make them a better person. Because when you apply the Dharma to your mind, it brings peace to your mind. It makes your mind pure. And when your mind becomes pure, your body and your speech, the actions of your body and your speech also become pure. And in that way, your three doors, or you could say the body, speech, and mind, all become utterly pure and free from fault. And in that way, you become a better person. And when you become a better person, and when you have a sense of peace and happiness, those surrounding you also will feel this happiness and peace. And they can also be inspired to practice the Dharma, the Buddha Dharma. And in that way, a lot of great benefit can be accomplished for both not only oneself, but also others as well. So please keep that in mind. And please stay safe. Thank you.